Right, Rob here. Now, this video is just some screening questions and things to think about when you're watching stories we tell. Okay, so, as I said to you in the last video, made by Sarah Polley, Canadian filmmaker and actress. It's about her investigating who her real father is. Okay, as I said, the film's very postmodern, self-reflexive. It brings to mind Jean Baudrillard's ideas of hyperreality, and it also considers Jean-Francois Lyotard's ideas of incredulity towards meta-narratives. Okay? Also, remember to be thinking this in terms of Peter Watkins' idea of the mass audiovisual media and the monoform. It'd be a good idea to have your documentary theory handout in front of you to refer to as you're going through the film and make notes. You're going to have a double-sided A3 sheet to make notes on. I'm expecting that to be literally full of writing by the end of it. Remember, you need to be making notes about the use of film form. So, cinematography, mise-en-scène, editing and sound, because you need to be using those micro features to explain your macro ideas. Okay? I need detailed examples of techniques that are used in the film. Right, so this is Sarah Polley. She sort of like got her big film break in The Adventures of Baron Munchausen back in 1988, which is a Terry Gilliam film. Well, worth watching, is really good. She's done some sort of like indie Canadian movies like Exotica. She was in the excellent David Cronenberg sci-fi horror film Existenz back in 1999. It's worth a look. She was in the teen movie Go in 1999. She was in Dawn of the Dead back in 2004. She was in a very good Beowulf and Grendel film in 2005 with, of all people, Gerard Butler. Imagine Gerard Butler being in a good film. Would have thunk it. And then she was in Splice, which I think is a horror film from 2009. But since then, she's concentrated on being a director and producer. And she's made a couple of documentaries in particular. Now, as I said last time, Story to Tell is a film that questions the division between fact and fiction. It is incredulous towards the meta-narrative of truth. What is truth? Okay? This is a film that's all about the fact that you can never really get to the truth of things. In fact, there may not even be such a thing as a truth. You've only got opinion. You've got different viewpoints, different attitudes. The film is always going to be filtered and mediated through the opinions of the filmmaker, through their ideologies, through their beliefs. The people being interviewed have got their own ideas about what happened, and those are going to be filtered by what they saw and what they didn't saw, what they heard and what they didn't hear, and what their beliefs and attitudes are. And of course, we as audiences are going to receive those messages in different ways, depending on our own personal attitudes and beliefs and experiences. So here we need to be considering Stuart Hall, all right? And reception theory. So you've got the dominant, hegemonic or preferred reading. You've got negotiated readings. And you've got oppositional readings. So you've got to ask yourself, how are those going to affect your response to the film? And what do you think the preferred meaning is? Is it promoting some kind of dominant or hegemonic meaning? Or is it challenging dominant and hegemonic meanings? It's very ambiguous. It's got no necessary right or wrong answers in it. It exploits analog and digital technology in quite a sophisticated way, which we need to talk about in a minute. You are going to be looking at the way in which digital technology has affected film and filmmaking and how it affects the meanings of the movie. And you've got to apply the ideas and theories from the key documentary filmmakers I went through last lesson. As I said, think about how this relates to Nick Broomfield and Michael Moore, but particularly think about Peter Watkins. Again, you're looking at AO1 and AO2. We went through them last lesson. I'm not doing it in detail again. Told you these questions are going to be marked at a 20. You're not going to be comparing anything, but you've got to be looking at the aesthetics of it. So micro features, remember. especially the editing, mise-en-scène, sound, cinematography, etc. Special effects as well. And you've got to be thinking about the social, cultural, political, historical, institutional context of this, especially around what is documentary and how the film was made, but we'll do that at a later period. Now, the one thing I want you to be particularly looking for in this is this idea of technology. This film uses a variety of different film formats. Now, the first thing it uses is something called Super 8. Here you can see Sarah Polley operating a Super 8 camera. They went through a load of these during the making of this film. Super 8 was invented as a home movie format. Now, we're talking back in, World War II, I think. Well, I mean, before, like the 30s. Okay? So, up until the invention of the video camera, the home video camera back in the 70s, I guess, Super 8 was what was used for doing home movies. Okay? It was called Super 8 because it's shot on 8mm wide film. Okay? And it's shot at 16 frames per second. Film is usually shot at 24 frames per second. Video usually somewhere in the range of 30 frames per second. So it gave quite a jerky kind of movement. But it also had a really beautiful picture. The images were soft, fuzzy, grainy looking. They had jerky movement because it was only 16 frames per second. The colours were odd. They could be at the same time quite washed out and soft, but at the same time they could also be quite rich. So look, for example, how rich this red is, whilst how everything else is sort of like washed out. This is what 16mm looks like, okay? Look at that, there's sort of like a lack of detail in things. Like you can't see the leaves in this tree. It's not a very high resolution image. Because it's film, and it was obviously going to have been at some point or other played through loads of projectors and stuff, it will end up getting scratched and damaged. And to this day, Super 8 footage is used to connote a sense of memory. It's used to connote a sense of nostalgia and the past. Okay, even though, no one uses Super 8 to record things anymore, we still associate the image of Super 8 with home movie footage. It also has a vignette effect. A vignette is where things, you can see this here, it's getting darker towards the corners. That's called a vignette. Alright. Shooting on this is pretty expensive, mind you, because the film is getting increasingly difficult to get hold of and difficult to process. Okay, so it's quite expensive for you to do things, but she has used it for a reason. You have to ask yourself, why is some of this film shot in Super 8? The rest, well, some of the film was shot in 16mm film. That was used for some of the recreations. I believe that was used for the recreations of her meeting her biological father, because they wouldn't have filmed that in reality, would they, at the time? So they recreate those sequences. Those are shot in 16mm film. Again, to connote the sense of memory, because it's an old-fashioned, obsolete format. Well, I say obsolete, some people still use it. But the rest of the film was shot in high-definition digital video using Sony Cine Alta HDW f900R cameras. Like this one. That's one of those cameras. Okay? This is Super 8 footage of her filming with a high-definition camera. This is high-definition footage of her filming with a Super 8 camera. Look at how sharp and clear this image is in comparison to the Super 8, which is grainy and fuzzy. Okay? The fact that it's grainy and fuzzy can be seen as a negative, but it can also be seen as a positive because it creates a very nice aesthetic effect. Think about the idea, though, of realism. Which looks more real? And which looks better because of aesthetics? Alright? Anyway, what's interesting about this camera is I think it was the first commercially available high-definition digital video camera. It was invented by Sony for George Lucas to make the Star Wars movies, the prequels. So it was first used for about 5 minutes or so of The Phantom Menace, and then the entire of Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith was shot using these cameras. 1080p is the image standard of television. So if you've got an ordinary high definition, not 4K, an ordinary 2K high definition TV, that's the standard of footage. That's DVD, oh, sorry, it's Blu-ray quality. So that's Blu-ray quality image, right? Modern high definition film cameras tend to be 4, 6 or even 8K, and the images you see projected in a cinema are 4K images, alright? So that's twice as good. So it's a modern high definition camera, but quite obsolete by 2020 standards. Nonetheless, a sharp, hard, high quality image. So they use the high definition cameras to connote the present, while the analog cameras, the 16mm and the Super 8, are used to connote the past. Right? Obviously, they were going to also be using real home movie footage that was shot by her dad of her and her family when she was young in Super 8. Right? Now, bear that in mind. Think about it during the film. There is one particular piece in the film, I don't know, about 2/3 of the way through, where the entire film changes completely. Alright? Everything you've seen and heard in the first half of the film is going to be put into an entirely new perspective. Watch out for it. Anyway, the other beauty of high definition cameras is they're easy to use. They're cheap. They record on, these ones I think recorded on the cassette tapes. But they could record straight into a computer hard drive. That makes your workflow a lot cheaper and easier, because you can be, you can film for as long as you like. I think the tapes for it were about an hour. But, you can record for as long as you like. You can immediately then capture that, shove it into the computer and start editing while you're shooting. You don't have to worry about sending the film off to be processed. You don't have to worry about getting them back, looking at the rushes or dailies as they were called to see what worked or what didn't work. You can do that immediately, right? Plus you've got a huge monitor you can watch. It looks exactly like what the camera sees. That makes it quick and easy to edit, because you can edit it on a computer using Premiere, like you did your project or whatever it is you want to use, Avid or Final Cut Pro, whatever. It makes it flexible, it makes it practical, it makes it cheap, and therefore is important for documentaries, because it means a lot of documentaries can get made that wouldn't have been made otherwise. You can now shoot documentaries. You don't even need one of those massive cameras. You can shoot 1080p quality footage on your phone. Alright? Entire movies are now being made on phones. Alright? And, just little small handheld, high quality, high definition, camcorders can be used to make movies. If you haven't seen it yet, it's probably still on More 4. Go and watch For Sama, which came out last year, which is an absolute masterpiece about a woman in Aleppo filming the experience of being under siege in Syria. Work of cinematic genius, highly recommended. Films like that are made possible because you can film on a camera, on a digital SLR, like you did for your project work. Okay? So, these are the things I want you to be considering when you're watching the movie. I'm making notes about it on your sheet. 1. What is truth? And how does that relate to documentary, which purports to be showing the truth, in inverted commas? Whose truth are we seeing? Is there such a thing as objective truth at all? Think about hyperreality. Think about incredulity towards meta-narratives and all that kind of stuff, right? Subjectivity versus objectivity, and how do they relate to this film? Okay? What is the relationship between Super 8 film and the concept of memory, and how does that relate to truth? What are the ethical implications of having your father narrate the documentary, especially in terms of the concept of objectivity, right? Do documentaries have to be objective, or can they be subjective? Is one better than the other? And finally, think about reenactment. There are things in this film that have been reenacted, right? What are the ethical implications of reenacting sequences? How does that relate to truth? How does that relate to reality, especially in terms of how the sequences are made to look like real home movies? Those are the things I want you to consider when you're watching this film. If you've got any questions, ask Simon. If you've got any other questions, you can email me and I will get back to you. Enjoy the film.